Hey, how's it going? It's nice to see you again. There's a classic piece of wisdom that states, the most important step that you can take is the first one. I've been reading Braelen Sanderson's The Stormlight archive, and one of the main characters in the series has a spin on that wisdom. He says the most important step that you can take is the next one. I find this really compelling because it challenges the traditional ways in which we approach goals, progress, or starting something more importantly. Take, for example, how many times have you been to a gym in January only to find that gym more empty the next month? Classically, when we start something, we put all our focus on actually beginning and not the doing. And that's a generalization, of course, but instead of looking at it like starting is the most important part, by taking that bit by bit and approaching it as the next step is always the first one, then you can actually start to build in a better reward system for yourself because you are accomplishing goals on a smaller scale. This is also a study in momentum because I think this way of thinking really helps us preserve our energy and to get the ball rolling, either creatively or practically, to achieve a goal. Starting is difficult, and I don't fault people for looking at the first step as the most important one. And it's just a little perspective shift, because functionally this is really similar. And I also for a long time have considered the first step to be valuable, because it is. Getting going and overcoming resistance is challenging, it's difficult, but maintaining momentum might even be harder than that. And by looking at it as a step-by-step iterative process, it becomes more manageable, more approachable, and you can build that excitement and momentum over time slowly. It takes a lot of momentum to get started. A body at motion tends to stay at motion, and a body at rest tends to stay in rest. By overcoming the struggles of starting day by day by day, by looking at the next step, we're not so overwhelmed with the prospects of what we have to achieve. When, let's say for a creative project, you want to make an album, a book, a painting series, it is far too overwhelming to consider the entire body of work as a goal because it is too overwhelming. I think that in order to maintain momentum, you cannot look too far into the future. You can daydream about it, you can think about how that's going to go, and there's nothing wrong with that. Even thinking too far into the future to give yourself anxiety, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. More to say that that is a method that could be enhanced by a different perspective shift. So it's kind of the same philosophy as if you were, say, needing to read a chapter in a textbook. And I've heard this piece of wisdom shared where you'll have a paragraph, you put a little gummy bear at the end of the paragraph. You keep doing that until you finish the chapter. Other people approach it in a different way, and they have their stash of gummy bears at the end when they finish the chapter. But by parceling out your rewards in a more streamlined way, it keeps you going. It's kind of like the Hansel and Gretel, picking up the breadcrumbs sort of idea. Bad analogy, because that doesn't end well. I don't mean to associate it with Hansel and Gretel, but more so just as a different way to approach finishing something or taking something to completion. It's very easy to put your next foot in front of you. It's not so easy to start with that one step and look at all of the progress yet to go and have no breaks in between. So I implore you to just take a moment to think about how this could be applied to whatever you're working on right now. For me, I have this whole idea of a book that I want to write, and I want to keep making videos, and I find that to be really difficult because there's just so much to do and too little time to do it. So by taking things one step at a time, I don't have to achieve this grand old thing when I first set out to do something. Also, by placing goals so far away, it is nice to have a consistent thing that we're aiming towards, but how many times have our goals changed? What we want slightly altered? And this also helps accommodate for that. I more mean that in the sense of like a creative project will take on a life of its own before you know it. An album that you're working on might sound completely different as a final product than the idea that you initially started. And by focusing on the next step, you can kind of steer those goals in a more streamlined direction. So let's not be overwhelmed by what we have to do, because it's very easy to do that. Let's not get too distracted by what is ahead of us, and instead focus on the next step. So I must say thank you to Braelen Sanderson for allowing me to ponder this quote. And here's to making cool stuff, step by step, 1 foot at a time. That's how I got here, after all. One step, the next step. Packing my camera, taking my microphones, hiking out down here. Those are all individual goals. My goal is not to come out here and shoot a video. My goal is to get the car started, to warm up. My goal is to make sure the windscreen is attached right, and then see where it goes. It allows you a level of flexibility and improvisation that I think is really helpful and healthy for the process. But that is also to say, this is just a thought experiment. There's no one right way to think about things, and there's also nothing wrong with thinking about the most important step is the first one. It's just a challenge to the way that you think, and I think the more we do that, the better that we are as producers and creatives and as habit formers and goal doers. So yeah, I'll leave you with that. Stormlight Archive is an amazing series. Highly recommend. It motivates me every day that I listen to it. So write that book, not even one chapter at a time, but one sentence at a time, one outline step, one plot, and go from there. See what happens, huh? All right, thank you for watching this video. I appreciate you, and until next time, here's the river to play me out.